There was a moment where like all of Paris would be excited when wild strawberries came in, and you would see people walking in the streets carrying these kind of precious cartons of strawberries, and then they would disappear. And that kind of ephemeral charm was absolutely something.
Aleksandra Crapanzano and I share the same passions. We're obsessed with our children, addicted to Paris, and from the moment we wake up until the moment we go to sleep, we write, we talk, and we dream about food. Aleksandra's written 4 fantastic books: the London Cookbook, Eat Cook, LA, Gâteau, and most recently, Chocolat, Parisian Desserts, and Other Delights. So let's talk about the book. Let's talk about this beautiful Parisian book. There's a map, isn't there?
So long before iPhones and being able to, check where you were all the time and have somebody, tell you where you are into your AirPods, people used to say to me, "Where do you go in Paris? Like, what's your favorite area?" And I would draw these little maps, and I don't know how to draw, so nothing was proportional, nothing made any sense, but I would draw maps of kind of where the chocolate shops were, where the bakeries were, where the fun places to go were. So I always drew these kind of funny little maps, and then I thought, you know what? This is what people need to see, because it's so different from putting on your AirPods and being told, turn left it's just, and what I love in these illustrations is also just showing just how many chocolate shops there are, right? I mean, Paris is so full of chocolate shops, and there are, you can literally have a kind of 5-street radius where you have 10 chocolate shops. Like de Beauvais-Galais, which, started right after the Revolution.
Yes, really.
It's still à la rue de son père.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
And the history of that is, I love history, as you know, but I found out that de Beauvais was the pharmacist to Marie Antoinette. And so he used to make her, she always got these terrible headaches, which were probably hangovers, but he would give her little, whatever the equivalent of Tylenol was back then. And she would always kind of pucker her lips at the bitterness. So one day he thought that he would put the medicine in a little bit of chocolate cocoa and kind of create a little paste with it. And he added a little bit of almond powder and a little bit of orange blossom, and he mushed it all together and gave it to her. And that really became the first kind of chocolate bonbon.
I didn't know that.
And they sell them now without the medicine.
Oh. Do you think that it is the French? That if you go to Italy, that good chocolate belongs to the French.
I think what the French did is they really created the great chocolate desserts. I don't think they can claim credit for chocolate necessarily. And I've certainly had incredible chocolate in Switzerland and Belgium and Italy. But they really, I mean, a mousse au chocolat soufflé, I mean, Charlotte, I mean, so many, a bouche de Noël, all of those great, the flourless chocolate cake that we all love, right?
Should we read one of them?
Sure.
We were going to say usually, the guest chooses a recipe from one of our recipes, but we wanted you to choose one from your book.
I chose to read a favorite recipe, which translates as simple chocolate silk. In French, it's a crémeux simple. And what I love about it is it's not quite a pudding. It's not quite a mousse. It's just literally chocolate silk. It's chocolate cream. Crémeux is obviously cream. And it's so easy. I make it all the time. You can put fruit underneath it. You can put berries on top. You can put little caramelized nuts on top. You can add ginger. I mean, it's one of those recipes that you can just do things to and change all the time. So, crémeux simple, simple chocolate silk. Now, this makes 8 very small portions. I would probably do 6 slightly larger portions. You need 280 grams of dark chocolate, between 58 and 62% cacao, 1 cup of heavy cream, 1/2 cup of whole milk, 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, 2 large eggs at room temperature, and you can add the seeds from 1 vanilla bean if you want. and just a touch of salt. I say 1/8 teaspoon, but just a little pinch. Break the chocolate into pieces and place in a mixing bowl. Lightly whisk the cream, milk, sugar, and eggs together in a saucepan. Place over medium-low heat and whisk constantly until the mixture has started to thicken. Remove the crémeux from the heat, pour it over the chocolate, and gently stir as the chocolate melts. Once the chocolate is melted, whisk by hand or using electric beaters or an immersion blender fitted with a whisk attachment until the mixture is smooth and creamy. Allow it to come to room temperature. If using fruit, the crémeux may be poured over the fruit or be topped with it in individual ramekins or in a little serving bowl. And if you won't be serving the crémeux within the day, hold off on the fruit until within a few hours of serving. This is just so it doesn't release too much liquid. The crémeux should be kept refrigerated, covered tightly with plastic wrap. Make sure the wrap touches the surface of the crémeux so that a film doesn't form. Chill for at least 1 hour and up to 24, then bring to cool room temperature before serving.
Yeah.
So easy.
So easy.
So easy. You just stir cream and chocolate, basically.
Let's do it.
It's perfect. It's a perfect recipe.
When you were writing the book, were you just cooking all the time?
Oh my gosh,
chocolate?
yes.
And how did that go down with the
with
family?
John and Garrick.
And I can't think of anything better than having my wife, partner, mother making another chocolate recipe. What was that?
I think
like?
I must have made about 200 chocolate desserts in the course of
how long?
18 months.
Well, that's
it was a lot. It was a lot. And then I would retest. Sometimes I do more than one a day. I do variations.
Yeah.
So you know what it's like. It's constant testing.
Yeah.
Thankfully, my family loves chocolate. I think the tough thing about food writing is that you tend to absorb yourself in a subject over a period of time. And so I remember Amanda Hesser once saying to me that she was doing a piece on tomatoes, and all she had cooked for a week were tomatoes. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just part of it.
Yeah.
But I am still not sick of chocolate. I still love chocolate.
What is a complex recipe that you
I would say the only
sometimes there are recipes that you want to get out and hurry, and sometimes the most relaxing thing you can do on a Saturday, don't you think?
Yes.
Is to do a recipe that will take. What would that one be?
The opera cake.
Oh,
the
love
opera is
cake.
such a great cake. It's the only truly difficult recipe I put in the book. And it's not even that difficult, but it has so many different components that it really is. It's a project.
Do you want to tell everybody what an opera cake is?
An opera cake is very thin layers of jacquard, which is a kind of almond sponge cake that have been brushed in. It could be a coffee simple syrup, or add a little bit of rum to it. It has layers of either crémeux or French buttercream, chocolate buttercream. It's multiple layers. It is covered, and each one is beautifully saturated with the liquid, so you really get that explosion of flavor. And what I love about jacquard and all of those French sponge cakes, the Genoise, is that they really can absorb a tremendous amount of liquid, of flavor, and still keep their structure.
When we lived in Paris, that was a cake that we always went for, because it was actually something that I'd never had made. I've made lots of different types of cakes and eclairs and sorbets, but the opera just was something that I wanted somebody else to make for me.
Was this when Richard was doing Pompidou?
Yes. My sister was an artist, and she was living. Richard was doing the Pompidou. We moved to Paris. Food was, I used to say, every check, when you had checkbooks, every stub was for food. It was either in a restaurant, buying patisserie, or eating, wherever we did. We shopped and ate and ate and ate. It's a rare city that you would get in the back of a taxi with a C-Pass, and the driver would tell you how to cook it.
Oh, is that amazing?
And I feel that is the culture of food. When, somebody will tell you what they grew up with. And going to the boulangerie, if you wanted bread in the morning at lunch, you'd go in the morning. And if you wanted bread in the evening, you'd go after 4 and get the bread in the evening.
I know exactly what you mean. I loved, growing up, I moved there when I was 10. And I had this great big Bouvier, a huge dog named Romeo, 125-pound dog from Normandy.
Wow.
And I would come home from school and we would just take off, the two of us, and walked all over Paris. And he could go into every single shop.
Age 10.
Yeah. I mean, he had a great sense of direction.
Yeah, amazing.
and nobody was going to, it was so safe compared to New York.
Yeah.
It was a sudden burst of freedom.
Tell me about growing up. Let's talk about your parents, first of all, Jane.
Parents. So my mother has, she wrote the letter from Europe for the New Yorker magazine for 60 years, from the age of 23 to 83. And so when I was, a kid, we would always go to Paris and Italy. We'd go to France and Italy in the summers, and she would be kind of working and working at home and doing interviews and all of that.
Did she cook?
Yes.
Yeah.
My mother cooks. She's a really funny cook because she's an excellent cook. She's totally a Julia Child cook. And
I respect that. Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
And she thinks that she's not a creative cook because she uses cookbook, right? But when you look at the cookbook, there's so many annotations that they are her own recipes.
Your father?
But my father, who did actually cook for me when my mother was gone, would do a couple things really beautifully. I remember he early on taught me that one of the great flavors was to have an artichoke heart and a glass of milk, because there's something about that chemistry that produces the most incredible taste in your mouth.
Well, there we are into the chemistry.
Right.
What did your father do?
He's a professor of comparative literature and anthropology.
Yeah.
So when I was 10, he had a sabbatical. He wanted to go to Paris, and he was invited by Derrida to come and be a professor there for a year. And my mother wanted to work there, and I was put into a school there, and they ended up staying for 16 years.
So for you, it was a real immersion into culture,
Total.
into food, into... Did you go to restaurants? Would they take you?
I went to incredible restaurants.
Did they go out to eat?
The dollar was so strong to the franc back then that there was nothing
What
we
years
couldn't
was
do.
this? This was when?
This was early 80s for middle school, and then, straight into the 90s. Paris was much less expensive for an American. And so I remember going to Marc Menot's à l'Espérance. I remember going to Jamin and having those incredible potatoes that are all butter.
Talk about them. What are the potatoes?
Oh, gosh. These were the Robuchon potatoes, potato puree that he made with, I think it
More
was...
butter than potatoes?
It was an equal amount of butter and potatoes.
Have a bit of potato with your butter.
Exactly. But they were so sublime and just the purity of those flavors. But I also remember that I kind of fell in love with food shopping.
Yeah.
I mean, I would window shop at food shops, the way that you might, go and look at the windows at Bergdorf Goodman or go in the East Village and look at clothes. I would, with Romeo, we would walk around Paris and we would look at all of the windows of the different patisseries and the chocolate shops and the cheese shops. Barthélemy, we would go inside and just smell the cheese. And
it's an amazing... Barthélemy is just
the best.
Incredible cheese store.
Incredible.
The chefs, the layers and layers and layers of cheeses, yeah.
And if you asked for creme fraiche, they would just take a big ladle and pull it out of a big container, and you would just see the cream kind of drip into your little container and take it home, and it was so real. And then I started to, as I began to learn French better and better, I would go into food shops and I would listen to the dialogue between the customer and the shopkeeper. And I think that was really the beginning of my food education. There was a process by which you could tell that the customer had to prove that whatever they were going to do was worthy of, let's say, the best cut of meat. That there was a kind of a courtship and an assessment going on. And then once that was established, then it would be a conversation about whatever that dish was going to be. And then suddenly, say it is the butcher, he would start to talk about how to prepare the meat. And then they would look at the different... It was such it was not a transaction, it was a dialogue.
Did you understand seasonality from France? Do you think that...
Absolutely.
Going to the markets and seeing that the vegetable you saw last week was gone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I also remember the incredible attention, paid to whether they were... Remember, we would get Muscat grapes, and they'd be in a tiny little, beautiful, kind of almost origami-like, carton with paper just kind of ballooning over them so that nothing touched them, that there was a real sense of, or fraise des bois, that there was a moment where like all of Paris would be excited when wild strawberries came in, and you would see people walking in the streets carrying these kind of precious cartons of strawberries, and then they would disappear. And that was that kind of ephemeral charm was absolutely something. John said this to me once. He said, it was the place where your family as a whole was happiest.
Yes.
And I hadn't thought about that until then, but my father loved writing in cafes. My mother was just like in her element working. I had suddenly discovered a confidence that I didn't have, and an ability to be independent, and the city just had such an extraordinary romantic hold on me.
Yeah. I think there's also something about Paris, which is, apart from the food and the music, everything else of Paris is I get a thrill from the lighting at night.
Oh, yeah.
And you can be, and apparently Paris is lit by the same department, And so I think that's kind of amazing that what you see at the Invalides, you'll see at Pigalle, or, and for me, that kind of, that unity is something I love.
I never thought of that. It's that golden glow. The lights are beautiful.
Did your parents encourage you to cook?
No, but what happened is my mother had an American assistant, because those were the days where you typed instead of had a computer. So before she turned in a piece, it had to really be typed up with all of her notes, and so this American who would kind of be a babysitter as well to me in the evening, once took a skillet, put some ketchup in it, turned the heat on, and put a box of dried spaghetti.
Oh my gosh!
And that was supposed to be
she cooked
dinner.
It in the towel.
And I thought to myself, no way. So I started cooking when my parents went out, and I realized I guess I was cooking for the babysitter. And I just wanted the food to be good. How
old were you then? Like a teenager?
I was probably 10 or 11 or 12. And I remember I would always cook. I would get, because the chicken is so good in France, I would roast a chicken, deglaze it, the pan with white wine, add a ton of creme fraiche, a little Dijon, a lot of tarragon. Wow. And that was still is one of my all-time favorite meals. Yeah. So I did that. And then, when I went to friends' houses, I realized that, there was always a little something sweet. I mean, you learn to make yogurt cake at the age of 5 in every single school in France. And then you have this recipe that you have for life, which I love.
Was it shocking for you to go to Harvard? You went to Harvard in Cambridge.
Yes.
And was that a big adjustment to suddenly be on your own in America, in the United States?
I thought, I've lived all over the world. I can totally handle this. And I remember walking into, at that point it was called the Union Dining Hall at Harvard, where there were, 1,200 people eating, and it was incredibly noisy. And I suddenly just lost all my confidence. And I walked and I got a muffin at this little place called Warburton's. And for about the first week, I don't think I actually went into the cafeteria again. And then once I made friends and would meet people. But it was daunting. And then I had all of these strange things I didn't know how to do. I'd never used a microwave. So the first time I went to put something in a microwave, I remember I was actually trying to take the pasta and heat it, because it was part of the salad bar, which I thought was odd. It's like freezing cold, sticky pasta. And so I'd put some butter on it, and I wanted to put it in the microwave, and I put a fork in. And I remember...
Oh, you put a fork in the microwave.
I remember somebody screaming, "Don't turn that on!" And I was like, why? I had no idea. And I learned, I basically think at Harvard I ate peanut butter, strawberry jam, and banana sandwiches for most of it. The food was really horrible. So
was your first food job involved with food, or was it film?
Well, it kind of was. My first job was working for Mike Nichols. And Mike did not want Diane, his wife, Diane Sawyer, to know what he was eating, because he was supposed to be on a very strict heart diet. So part of my job was to go into his trailer and make a pasta.
Oh, really? Really?
And we were all hooked up by walkie-talkie. So if Diane was coming to set, I would get this message of, open the windows, light the Higo candle, get Mike his Altoids.
Do you think she was
spritz him with
suspicious?
vetiver.
Because she was a great journalist, she probably knew exactly what he was doing.
I think she knew and allowed it. And then at night, I remember on that set, I would be given thousands of dollars in cash, and a teamster would take me to Peter Luger's to get steak. It's a great steakhouse in Brooklyn where I don't know how long they age those porterhouse steaks, but it's incredible, right? I mean, it's amazing, thick, fantastic steak. So I would get these wads of cash, and a teamster would take me to Peter Luger's, and then, it was kind of for above the line, Jack Nicholson, Mike, Michelle Pfeiffer. There were a bunch of people who would get the steak. And then I could take home the leftovers.
Could you fall in love with somebody who didn't care about food?
Never.
Never. Could you?
No,
I agree.
No. I was thinking about that today as one of my very first meetings in film actually was a producer took me out to lunch, wanted to option a script of mine, and he took me to the worst restaurant I've ever been to. And I thought, no way. It was a mistake because he turned out to be the better producer. But it's
he did turn out to be a good producer.
He did, but really? I didn't.
Okay.
I should have worked with him.
I thought you were going to say
because
it was consistent with him not being.
No, I thought, you know what?
Funny.
I can't possibly spend the next 3 years on a movie with somebody who doesn't like food. No, it is to me eating together is family.
Yeah.
I started food writing because I started in film, and I didn't really write about food until Garrick was born. In 2007, there was a Writers Guild strike, and I thought, you know what, let me send an article into the New York Times Magazine on food, and it was on French food, and that suddenly launched a side career. But to me, cooking was very much associated with feeding my family.
When you write these 4 fantastic books, do you eat do you sit down and have lunch, or do you kind of graze all day, or do you have nothing?
I do probably graze when I'm cooking because you're taking little bites of things kind of throughout the day. I do really, really believe in sitting down to dinner.
Yeah.
I don't care so much about the rest of the day. I mean, do you graze when you must in the kitchen?
In the restaurant, basically you don't eat until the end of service. And then, and it's interesting to see how different chefs eat, some of the front of house, front of house, the waiters pile food, and we cook our food for the staff. So everybody eats River Cafe food. We don't buy in any food or, cook. And it's almost like they try to impress their friends by different chefs do the staff lunch. And so I've had friends like Josh come at the end of a dinner, go and look and see what the staff or what pasta's there. I said, I wish I could have that. 2. It looks really good.
I have such a happy memory when I was writing the London Cookbook, which truly was inspired by you entirely, and my desire to come and spend time at the River Cafe and learn and watch.
But it's a great book of many restaurants.
I had so much fun writing that. That was an important book for me. I think it was. I felt that there was something happening in London that was incredibly exciting, that I really do believe that you and Fergus kind of started, which was the idea that a restaurant could be delicious and fun and warm and sexy. You truly redefined to me the London restaurant. And I felt enormously inspired to
thank you.
To come and write about what you do, and also the way that you teach, the way that you work with your younger cooks, and the way that it was so gentle and precise at the same time, and so different from the kind of crazy Marco Pierre White, where everybody's tense and it's kind of a Machiavellian world. And I would just watch you, with the gentlest but very precise way of kind of offering a little suggestion or a correction or a taste.
I think
Watching you in
people
the
were doing
kitchen.
it at the, Fergus, as you say. I think Alice Walters thought about the way people could work in an open kitchen and treat each other with manners and the way. And as I said, I agree with you that I say it used to be that if you wanted to eat well, you had to dress up and behave, or else if you wanted to have a good time, you'd say, okay, I want to have a good time in a restaurant, but the food won't be as good. And why can't you have really, good food and have fun,
Yes.
and in a democratic space,
I also, almost every really great chef in London has been through the River Cafe. And that's why I wanted to do the family tree in the book, because you taught a generation, and that generation taught another generation, and you're still teaching generations. And so what you have done has had this extraordinary impact on restaurants throughout the world, the city and the world.
Well, I think it's great for the culture, and it's great when they go and you go to their restaurants and they're cooking exciting things or doing it their way. But I think a lot of them take away as much as the cooking and the way they respect the seasons or the food of how they're going to, the ingredients, the quality is the ethos, of trying to have a kitchen where people are, I think that old idea of the bullying and the shouting is really old-fashioned.
Very old-fashioned.
And I think people aren't going to put up with that anymore, and nor should they.
No.
Sitting with these three books, is there, like Paris, there is a consistency of the books, whether it's the illustrations. I was so interested in the fact that you had no photographs. Tell me about that.
So Gâteau and Chocolat are really, to me, part of a series. And so next I'm going to do Tarts and Galettes and Quiche. And what I wanted to do with this series is I wanted to really focus in on what Parisians make at home. And particularly for Americans, I think to separate this idea that I think a lot of people have when they go to Paris, that people, see pâtisserie and they assume that is French sweet making. And in fact, when you go into people's houses, they do cook desserts, they do bake. They bake very, very simply. And I realized that had not really been written about, that there were no books on kind of basic French cakes or, all of the chocolate desserts that you can actually make at home. And then I wanted, so many of my French friends will quickly make a tart for dinner. Very simple. Could be a tomato tart. It could be something in the winter with some cheese and lardons and melted onions. But it's such a simple thing, and I think there's something economical about it and easy about it, and it's less meat focused. It's also more vegetable focused. So that one will be savory as well. But I really chose to have the books illustrated because I didn't want people to feel that they had to compete with a photograph. And I think this is particularly true for desserts, but I didn't want somebody to think that they had to take out a pastry bag and create perfect little roses on top of their cake. I wanted them to to not compare themselves, to know that they could just
that's
bake
back
a
to the
cake,
performance.
and sprinkle it with some powdered sugar or some cocoa, and it's gorgeous in its simplicity.
So we look forward. When is the next one coming out?
Oh, I haven't started writing it
Okay, go
yet.
home. You gotta start working now. We want another cookbook.
Thank you,
You're
Ruthie.
beautiful. We could talk for another
We
2
could talk.
hours. But to say that, you were talking about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at Harvard, and you were talking about pressing your nose up. I can imagine this 10-year-old girl walking through Paris with her nose pressed against the window to look at the food, whether it's an orange or a piece of cake or a piece of cheese. Food is all this. It's about sharing. It's about performance. It's about curiosity and energy and love, but it's also about comfort. So I think if I were to ask you as our last question, if you needed comfort, I hope we don't, is there a food that you would go to, that you would reach for?
I would make a carbonara.
Would you? Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that offers more comfort than pasta. And particularly that pasta. to me because it's so simple. You always have all the ingredients for a carbonara on hand. It takes no time. It's good, and there's a the pancetta or the guanciale and the cheese. It's exactly what you need. I cannot resist a carbonara. And
do you
I do
make it
think
with one type of pasta, or do you make it with different ones?
Sometimes spaghetti, sometimes linguine. I know that if I have only short pasta in the house, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But I feel that to me part of comfort is the twirling.
Yeah.
If I want real comfort,
Oh, do you? That's interesting.
I do really want to twirl.
Yeah, to twirl.
It must go back to childhood. I mean, there's something in that act. I also love stirring risotto, for example.
Yes, I think risotto's
there's something very But that's longer. If I want comfort and I want it right away, it's a carbonara.
Okay, we'll have one together.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, my total pleasure.
Ruthie's Table 4 was produced by Alex Bell, Robbie Hamilton, and Zad Rogers, with Andrew Sang and Bella Salini. This has been an Atomised production for iHeart Media.